Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner, and I'm joined this week by Jim Antle, who is Executive Editor of the Washington Examiner magazine and former politics editor. And Jim, I want to talk about the debates that are coming up. We've had some extremely newsy and, in fact, explosive debates between the top of the ticket. But we're going toward the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Governor Walz. Vance is a very smart talker. He talks off the cuff. That's actually sometimes got him into trouble. Like his boss, he talks off the cuff. And both of them sometimes stray into areas that give their opponents opportunities to exploit. Harris is very scripted indeed. Is Tim Walz scripted? What should we expect from the debate now a week away?
So a really unusual thing about the choice of Tim Walz and how they've deployed him is that one of the reasons Harris was said to have wanted to pick him was because of his likability and because of his effectiveness in things like media interviews, and that maybe that could sort of smooth over some of her rougher edges, which she has really worked hard to smooth over herself. But because Harris has been so scarce in terms of media interviews and availabilities, they have not made Walz anywhere nearly as available as most people expected, certainly not as available as J.D. Vance. So it's going to be interesting seeing him now in this unscripted setting, because they've not wanted him to outshine the top of the ticket.
Right.
You want him to be sort of safe and conventional. This is going to be an opportunity to sort of see this Midwestern dad that they've wanted to present to the country, but with this important caveat. Walz and Vance do not like each other very much, and I suspect that that's going to show in their debate.
Well, that would give each of them the opportunity perhaps to get under each other's skin, which was something that Harris did rather well against Trump and got him riled up. But she managed to be very scripted, even in the supposedly unscripted occasion of a debate. That was very notable on the first question. She was asked for a detailed explanation of her economic policies, and she just went on a riff about being
I'm a middle-class kid.
All of that stuff. So do you actually expect Walz to be somewhat freewheeling in this circumstance because he's supposedly good at that, or do you expect the campaign to keep a tight leash on him?
I think there is going to be a message, a script, and I think they're going to try to stick to it. I think that has worked pretty well for this ticket so far, so I don't expect a major departure, but he does have a bit of a temper. So I think Walz is going to needle Vance. I think he's going to try to hit home all the cat lady comments, most of these comments that were made before he was a political candidate, but still pretty recently, because he made the transition from pundit to politician just in the last couple of years.
Right.
And so I suspect he's going to go hard negative on Vance, try to tie that to Trump, and then Vance will probably give as good as he gets. And so the question then is, does that rattle Walz at all, or do we see this Walz temper?
Yeah, one of the things that presidential candidates are supposed to do is to be the attack dogs. And neither of these two men seems reluctant to do that.
Right.
So we should probably expect a pretty fiery debate. But ultimately, will it really matter? There's a tendency during the last weeks and months of a presidential campaign to put a lot of emphasis on whatever is next.
Right.
But will it actually, do you think, have any serious impact? Do these two men, can they inflect the trajectory of the campaign?
Historically, vice presidential debates haven't mattered very much. I mean, one of the ones that's considered a more lopsided debate in history is Dan Quayle versus Lloyd Bentsen. Bentsen gets in the good line about "You're no Jack Kennedy," a comparison that Quayle had repeatedly been warned not to make and didn't make until about the third time the question was asked of him. But George H.W. Bush won that election, and he won it fairly easily. So even though that was a big moment, and we remember it, and it's taught to people who don't remember it in political science classes, it didn't swing the election. I would imagine the only thing that could be different here is, one, now that Trump is the older of the two candidates, Vance, with being a relative youth, he's the only non-boomer on either of the tickets. He might need to reassure some people that there is some youth on the Trump ticket.
Right.
And obviously, if Trump and Harris do not debate again, it could then this could be one of the few big moments that's left in a campaign that has been pretty topsy-turvy, because the Trump sentencing in New York has been delayed to pass the election, and we may not get another debate. So October surprises are a surprise, but there's not much else that's planned.
Well, let's turn to the possibility of another debate. After it was generally understood or generally agreed that Kamala Harris had won the debate, or performed at least considerably above fairly low expectations, and former President Trump had been derailed and got cross and really was not thought to have performed very well. The Harris campaign has said that it wants another debate. Trump has said he doesn't want another debate. Now, one of the things that this has allowed Harris to do is to suggest that somehow President Trump is a chicken. I think there's some sort of chicken costumed fellow who's been turning up at Trump rallies, and which is not a very new thing. There's an irony in this, of course, because Harris has been the nominee now for going on 2 months, and she has still not done a press conference or put herself in circumstances where she would really be challenged and have to think and speak off the cuff. Do you think it's now a done deal that there will be no debate? How effective do you think it is for Harris to turn the tables a bit and call Trump the coward for not debating?
I mean, it is a fact that Harris has refused to participate in certain debates herself. And so she hasn't wanted to debate on Fox. She did not accept the NBC News debate. Trump was willing to participate in both of those debates. So there was originally the possibility they would debate multiple times, and it wasn't Trump that rejected it. Trump has rejected the CNN debate specifically. Now, obviously, the fact that this rejection comes after he didn't do particularly well in the first debate does lend a certain amount of credence to the idea that maybe he doesn't want to debate her anymore. I think what both of them want is to create a negative news cycle for their opponent. And I think the Trump camp has concluded that a major network debate other than Fox will probably not do that for Harris, that they'll have to debate the moderators as well as Harris, and that any kind of basically competent Harris performance is going to receive rave reviews. If Harris really wants to debate Trump, she would do it on Fox, because I do suspect Trump might actually take that opportunity. The only other thing that I think could potentially get Trump to revisit debating and maybe open it up to even other networks is if he feels he has to do something to change his poll numbers. The polling has been very inconsistent since Harris took the top of the ticket. A lot of high-quality polls say the race is very close, but some do point to her maybe recreating Biden 2020 coalition. So if Trump feels like he has to do something to shake up the race, maybe he revisits it, and then maybe Harris doesn't want to debate quite so much anymore.
One of the things that came out of the debate between Trump and Harris was a lot of pundits, ourselves included, suggested that Trump really needed to become more disciplined in the message that he was trying to convey, that he needed to focus on the falsehood of Harris trying to suggest that she's somehow something new, when in fact she has been in the White House for 4 years now. But Trump seems very capable of being distracted, and there was one recent incident where he has repeatedly questioned a claim by Kamala Harris that she worked in a McDonald's at a French fry cooker, and he said he was going to go there and see what it was like. Is this a useful expenditure of his time? Does this work, or is it just him having fun almost?
There is an element of having fun. There's also, I think, it's been a virtue at times, but I think it's also is a flaw in his approach to these things, is that so much of how Trump looks at all of this is he's entertaining and amusing his audience. And at this point, he needs to be reaching beyond the live audience at these rallies and not just entertaining them, but sort of reinforcing his message to the remaining undecided voters. You know, for a guy who really made his bones on television, is a legitimate television star, when he gives a live speech, he's thinking of the audience in front of him and what works for them. The Republican National Convention speech was a prime example of this, where that was a very effective speech inside the convention hall. 90 minutes is not very effective to a television viewer,
right.
And that television audience is really who he should be reaching. So I think Trump is pretty good with message discipline in terms of branding and repeating, but he's not good at not, following the shiny object. He does get distracted, and he has to be aware that the press is largely going to report the off-message things he says, so you have to keep them to a minimum, and that he's not just talking to the rally goers.
Right. Well, he's got 5 or 6 weeks, I think somewhat under 6 weeks before Election Day, and the last votes will be cast. Obviously, votes are now being cast already. But that's where we'll have to leave it. We'll come back, and thanks very much for joining us, Jim, and thank you for joining us on Political Perspectives.